The summer sun was beating down hard on the parking lot of Riverside Farm Equipment when 16-year-old Tommy stepped out of his mom's old pickup truck. His hands were already rough from helping his grandfather fix tractors and other farm machines since he was 10 years old. Today was his first day at his summer job, and he had no idea what was waiting for him inside. Tommy walked through the big glass doors wearing his cleanest pair of jeans and a plain blue t-shirt. The place was huge, filled with shiny new tractors, combines, and all kinds of farming equipment. The smell of metal and oil reminded him of his grandfather's workshop, where he had spent countless hours learning how machines worked. Behind the front desk sat a woman with kind eyes who smiled when she saw him. "You must be Tommy. Welcome to Riverside. I'm Betty and I handle the paperwork around here." She handed him a clipboard with forms to fill out. "Don't worry, honey. Everyone here is friendly, and you'll do just fine." As Tommy filled out his papers, he could hear voices from the back of the building. Men were talking loudly about orders, deliveries, and repairs. The sound of air tools and machinery mixed with their conversations. This was exactly the kind of place where Tommy felt comfortable. Betty showed him to the back area where he would be working. "Your job is pretty simple," she explained. "Keep the parts organized, clean the tools, and help wherever needed. The other workers will show you the ropes." The parts room was massive, with tall shelves reaching almost to the ceiling. Boxes of bolts, filters, belts, and every kind of part you could imagine were stacked everywhere. Some areas were neat and organized, but others looked like a tornado had hit them. Tommy rolled up his sleeves and got to work. About an hour into his first day, Tommy heard heavy footsteps coming his way. A tall man with a perfectly ironed polo shirt and shiny black shoes walked into the parts room. His name tag read, "Mr. Davis, Floor Manager." He had the kind of walk that told everyone he was in charge. "So you're the new kid," Mr. Davis said, looking Tommy up and down. "Betty tells me you're here for the summer. Well, let me make something clear right away. This isn't a playground. We run a serious business here, and I expect everyone to pull their weight." Tommy nodded respectfully. "Yes, sir, I'm ready to work hard." Mr. Davis picked up a wrench from the workbench and examined it like he was checking for flaws. "Good, because we don't have time to babysit anyone. You stick to organizing parts and cleaning. Leave the real work to the people who know what they're doing." As the morning went on, Tommy noticed how Mr. Davis treated different people. With customers, especially the ones who looked wealthy, he was all smiles and friendly conversation. With the regular workers, he was bossy and impatient, and with Tommy, he barely acknowledged his existence. The lunch rush brought in several farmers who needed parts quickly. Tommy was restocking shelves when he overheard one of them talking to Betty at the front desk. "My harvester broke down right in the middle of my biggest field," the farmer said, worry clear in his voice. "I need someone to modify this part, so it fits right, but I need it done today. Tomorrow's supposed to rain, and if I don't get my crop in..." Betty looked concerned. "Let me check with Mr. Davis about getting that done in our workshop." Tommy knew exactly what the farmer was talking about. His grandfather had shown him how to modify similar parts using a hydraulic press. It was actually pretty simple if you knew the right technique. Mr. Davis came over and looked at the part. "We can get this done for you, but it'll have to wait until next week. Our hydraulic press is backed up with orders." The farmer's face fell. "Next week, but I need it today. Isn't there any way?" "Sorry, but that's just how it is. These machines are complicated and we can't rush quality work." Tommy continued working, but kept listening. More farmers came in throughout the afternoon with similar problems. The harvest season was in full swing, and everyone needed their equipment working perfectly. Any delay could mean losing thousands of dollars worth of crops. Around 3 o'clock, Tommy heard a loud bang from the workshop area, followed by some choice words that made Betty cover her ears. Mr. Davis came storming out, his face red with frustration. "Great, just great," he muttered to himself. "The hydraulic press just died on us." One of the mechanics, an older man named Joe, followed behind him. "It just stopped working, Davis. No warning, nothing. 1 minute it was fine. The next minute it won't build pressure." Tommy's ears perked up. He knew that hydraulic presses were the heart of any farm equipment shop. Without it, they couldn't bend metal, press bearings, or do dozens of other essential repairs. And with all the farmers needing work done for harvest season, this was a disaster. Mr. Davis was on his phone immediately. "Hello, this is Davis at Riverside Farm Equipment. We need a service tech out here right away. Our main hydraulic press is down." He listened for a moment and his face got even redder. "What do you mean next week? This is an emergency." Tommy could hear the voice on the other end explaining that all their technicians were busy with other emergency calls. Harvest season was tough on everyone, and equipment was breaking down all over the county. "Fine," Mr. Davis snapped. "But this is costing us money every minute it's down." He hung up and looked around at the worried faces of his employees. "All right, people. We're going to have to tell customers that any hydraulic work is delayed until next week." The farmers who were waiting for their parts looked devastated. Tommy watched as Mr. Davis explained the situation to them, trying to sound professional but clearly frustrated himself. "I understand this is inconvenient," Mr. Davis told them. "But these machines are complex. We need certified technicians to work on them. I can't just let anyone mess around with expensive equipment." Tommy had been quietly observing the whole situation. His grandfather had taught him that every machine talks to you if you know how to listen. The hydraulic press had made a specific sound when it failed, and Tommy had heard similar sounds before. He walked over to where Mr. Davis was standing. "Excuse me, sir?" Mr. Davis barely looked at him. "What is it, kid? I'm kind of busy here. I was wondering if I could take a look at the hydraulic press. I might be able to help." For a moment, Mr. Davis just stared at him. Then he let out a short laugh. "You want to look at the press, kid? Do you have any idea how complicated that machine is?" "Yes, sir, I do. My grandfather taught me about hydraulic systems. I've worked on similar machines before." The laughter got louder. "Your grandfather? Huh? Let me guess. He fixes lawnmowers in his garage?" Tommy felt his cheeks get warm. "No, sir. He used to run the maintenance shop at the big grain elevator across town. He taught me about all kinds of hydraulic equipment." By now, some of the other workers had gathered around to see what was happening. Mr. Davis seemed to enjoy having an audience. "Listen, kid," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I appreciate the offer, but this isn't a high school shop class. This is a professional operation with professional equipment. We can't just let Summer help mess around with machines worth more than most people's cars." Tommy tried again. "I understand, sir, but I really think I might know what's wrong." The sound it made when it stopped working sounded like a pressure leak somewhere in the system. Mr. Davis rolled his eyes dramatically. "Oh, really? And you figured that out just from hearing it across the room? Kid, we've got certified mechanics who can't diagnose the problem, but you think you can do it with your super hearing?" Some of the workers chuckled and Tommy felt smaller with each laugh. But he had promised his grandfather that he would always try to help when he could, even if it meant taking some heat. "I know it sounds crazy," Tommy said quietly, "but my grandfather always said that hydraulic systems make specific sounds when different things go wrong. The way this one sounded, I think there might be a crack in one of the high-pressure lines." Mr. Davis shook his head and turned to address the whole group. "Folks, this is exactly what's wrong with kids today. They think they know everything just because they watched a few YouTube videos. No respect for experience, no understanding of how the real world works." The mechanics looked uncomfortable, but none of them spoke up. Tommy felt his face burning with embarrassment, but something inside him wouldn't let him give up. "Sir, I'm not trying to show off or anything, I just want to help. If I'm wrong, then you haven't lost anything. But if I'm right, maybe we can get these farmers back to their fields today." Mr. Davis's expression hardened. "Kid, you're not listening. This isn't about being helpful. This is about knowing your place. You're here to clean and organize, not to pretend you're some kind of engineer." The farmers who had been waiting looked back and forth between Tommy and Mr. Davis. One of them, an elderly woman with dirt under her fingernails, stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said politely, "but maybe it wouldn't hurt to let the boy take a look. What's the worst that could happen?" Mr. Davis turned to her with his professional smile, but Tommy could see the irritation behind it. "Ma'am, I appreciate your patience, but I have a responsibility to protect this company's equipment. I can't let untrained people work on machinery worth tens of thousands of dollars." "But if he just looks at it," the woman persisted, "no harm in that, right?" "Wrong," Mr. Davis said firmly. Insurance won't cover damage caused by unauthorized personnel. Company policy is very clear on this. Tommy knew he was fighting a losing battle, but his grandfather's voice echoed in his head. Never be afraid to speak up when you know you can help, Tommy. Sometimes the right answer comes from unexpected places. Mr. Davis, Tommy said, trying to keep his voice steady. What if I signed something saying the company isn't responsible if I'm wrong? I really think I can help. The floor manager's patience finally snapped. Kid, are you not hearing me? The answer is no. Not maybe, not later, not if you sign a paper. No, you're a 16-year-old summer worker, not a hydraulic engineer. End of discussion. The workshop fell silent except for the hum of other machines. Tommy looked around at the faces staring at him. Some looked sympathetic, others seemed embarrassed for him. Mr. Davis had made his point clear in front of everyone, but as Tommy walked back to his corner of the parts room, he couldn't shake the feeling that he knew exactly what was wrong with that hydraulic press. And he couldn't stop thinking about all those farmers who needed their equipment fixed before the weather turned bad. Little did anyone in that workshop know that Tommy's father was sitting in an office building across town, reviewing financial reports from the 3 agricultural businesses he owned, including Riverside Farm Equipment. The next morning, Tommy arrived at work hoping things would be different. Maybe Mr. Davis had cooled down overnight, or maybe the repair company had found an earlier opening. But as soon as he walked through the doors, he could tell nothing had changed. The hydraulic press still sat silent in the corner of the workshop, and more farmers were gathered in the front area looking worried. Betty was doing her best to explain the situation to each new customer, but Tommy could see the stress on her face. I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, she was saying to a farmer in overalls. We're still waiting for the repair technician, hopefully by the end of the week. The farmer shook his head. End of the week, Betty? My combine needs those bearings pressed today. The weather report says rain for the next 3 days starting tomorrow. If I can't harvest before then, I'm looking at serious losses. Tommy kept his head down and went straight to the parts room, but he could hear similar conversations happening all morning. Farmer after farmer came in with urgent needs, only to be told they would have to wait. Some of them got angry, others just looked defeated. A few took their business elsewhere, which made Mr. Davis even more irritated. Around 10 o'clock, Mr. Davis called all the employees together near the front desk. His tie was crooked and Tommy could see sweat stains under his arms despite the air conditioning. All right, everyone, listen up, he said, trying to sound confident. I know we're dealing with some challenges right now, but we need to stay professional. When customers ask about the hydraulic press, just tell them we're working on it and we'll have it fixed as soon as possible. Joe, the older mechanic, raised his hand. Davis, what if they ask for a specific timeline? These folks are losing money every day. Tell them we're doing everything we can, Mr. Davis replied, and remind them that rushing repairs on complex equipment only leads to bigger problems down the road. Tommy was organizing bolts when he heard Mr. Davis continue. And another thing, I don't want anyone who isn't a certified technician going near that press. We've already had some unhelpful suggestions from people who don't understand how these machines work. Even though Mr. Davis didn't mention his name, Tommy felt everyone's eyes on him. His face got hot, but he kept sorting bolts and tried to ignore the embarrassment. After the meeting, work continued as usual, but the tension in the air was thick. Every time the phone rang, Mr. Davis would rush to answer it, hoping it was the repair company with good news. Each time, he hung up, looking more frustrated. During lunch break, Tommy sat outside on a loading dock eating the sandwich his mom had packed. Joe came out and sat down next to him, pulling out a thermos of coffee. Don't let Davis get to you, kid, Joe said quietly. He's under a lot of pressure right now. The owner of this place doesn't like it when things go wrong. Tommy looked at the older man. Have you ever seen a hydraulic press breakdown like this before? Joe nodded. Oh sure, plenty of times. These machines are workhorses, but they're not indestructible. Usually it's something simple, but finding the exact problem can be tricky. What kind of simple things? Tommy asked. Well, could be a seal went bad, or a filter got clogged, or maybe a line cracked somewhere. The hard part is that hydraulic systems are closed loops, so a small problem in one spot can affect the whole system. Tommy's grandfather had explained the same thing. Hydraulic fluid under pressure was like water in a garden hose. If there was even a tiny hole somewhere, the whole system would lose pressure. "Joe," Tommy said carefully, "what if someone thought they knew where the problem might be? Hypothetically, I mean." The older mechanic looked at him with curious eyes. "Hypothetically, huh? Well, if someone had a good idea about where to look, it might save everyone a lot of time and money. But Davis is pretty set on waiting for the certified guys." They finished eating in comfortable silence. Tommy was thinking about his conversation with Joe when they heard shouting from inside the building. "This is ridiculous," a voice boomed. "I've been a customer here for 15 years and you're telling me I have to wait a week for a simple bearing press?" Tommy and Joe hurried inside to see what was happening. A large man in a cowboy hat was standing at the front counter, his face red with anger. Behind him stood 3 other farmers, all looking equally upset. "Sir, I understand your frustration," Mr. Davis was saying, but his professional smile looked forced. "But we can't compromise on safety. These machines require specialized knowledge to repair." "Safety?" the farmer shot back. "You know what's not safe? Having my entire corn crop rot in the field because you can't fix one machine." More customers had gathered around and Tommy could see that some of them were starting to take sides. The farmers were all supporting each other, while Mr. Davis looked increasingly alone. "Look," Mr. Davis said, raising his voice to address the whole group. "I know this is inconvenient, but rushing repairs is how accidents happen. We have to follow proper procedures." One of the farmers, a woman with gray hair, spoke up. "What about that young man who offered to look at it yesterday? Why not let him try?" All eyes turned to Tommy, who was standing near the back of the crowd. He felt his stomach drop as Mr. Davis's expression darkened. "Ma'am, that young man is a 16-year-old summer employee," Mr. Davis said loudly. "He has no training, no certification, and no business working on complex hydraulic equipment." "But what if he's right?" another farmer asked. "What harm could it do to let him look?" Mr. Davis laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What harm? Let me explain something to all of you. That hydraulic press costs more than most of your trucks. The insurance alone on that machine is thousands of dollars a year. If some untrained kid breaks it trying to play mechanic, guess who pays for it?" The crowd murmured, but the gray-haired woman wasn't backing down. "So you'd rather let it sit, broken, than take a chance on someone who might be able to help?" "That's exactly right," Mr. Davis said firmly. "Because I'm responsible for this equipment, and I'm not going to let some teenager with delusions of grandeur turn a manageable problem into a complete disaster." Tommy felt like he was shrinking as every eye in the place looked at him. The words, "delusions of grandeur," hit him like a slap. Maybe Mr. Davis was right. Maybe he was just a kid who thought he knew more than he actually did. But then he remembered his grandfather's workshop, and all the times they had fixed machines that other people said couldn't be repaired. His grandfather never made him feel stupid for asking questions or offering ideas. "Sir," Tommy said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I wasn't trying to cause any trouble. I just thought maybe—" "Maybe what?" Mr. Davis interrupted, now clearly enjoying having an audience for his lecture. "Maybe you could waltz in here and solve a problem that has stumped our experienced mechanics. Maybe your high school shop class taught you more than people who've been doing this for decades." The sarcasm in his voice made several people in the crowd shift uncomfortably. Even some of Mr. Davis's own employees looked embarrassed. "I know it sounds crazy," Tommy said, trying to find his courage. "But my grandfather really did teach me a lot about hydraulic systems. I've helped him fix dozens of machines over the years." Mr. Davis rolled his eyes dramatically. "Your grandfather? Right. Let me guess. He was some kind of mechanical genius who passed all his secret knowledge down to you?" Tommy's cheeks burned. "He wasn't a genius, sir. He just understood how machines work, and he taught me to listen to what they're trying to tell you when something goes wrong." "Listen to machines," Mr. Davis repeated, making sure everyone heard the ridiculous-sounding phrase. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a machine whisperer on our hands." Several people chuckled, and Tommy felt smaller than ever. But the gray-haired farmer woman looked annoyed. "There's no need to be cruel about it," she said sharply. "The boy is just trying to help." "Help?" Mr. Davis's voice got louder. "You want To know how he can help? He can help by doing the job he was hired to do and leaving the real work to real professionals. The workshop fell silent except for the hum of other machines running in the background. Tommy looked around at all the faces staring at him. Some looked sympathetic, others seemed embarrassed by the whole scene, and a few appeared to agree with. Mr. Davis. Joe stepped forward. Davis, maybe we should just— No, Joe. Mr. Davis cut him off. This needs to be said. We've got customers losing money, we've got equipment down, and we've got deadlines to meet. The last thing we need is some summer help thinking he can save the day like he's in some kind of movie. Tommy felt tears threatening, but he refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of all these people. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I was just trying to help. Well, here's how you can help, Mr. Davis said, pointing toward the parts room. Go organize inventory. Leave the hydraulic systems to people who actually know what they're doing. As Tommy walked away, he heard one of the farmers say, That was pretty harsh, don't you think? Mr. Davis's response followed him. Sometimes you have to be harsh to get through to people. The kid needs to learn his place. Tommy spent the rest of the afternoon in the parts room, trying to focus on his work but replaying the scene over and over in his head. Every time someone walked past, he wondered if they were thinking about what had happened. Around closing time, Betty came back to check on him. Her kind eyes looked worried. You doing okay, honey? She asked softly. Tommy nodded, not trusting his voice. Don't let it get to you too much, she said. Davis is under a lot of stress. The owner of this company expects things to run smoothly, and when they don't, Davis takes it personally. Betty, Tommy asked, what's the owner like? She smiled. Actually, he's a really good man. Fair, hardworking, treats people with respect. Complete opposite of how Davis was acting today, if you ask me. Tommy wondered what the owner would think if he knew how Mr. Davis had treated him in front of all those customers. But it didn't matter now. The damage was done, and Tommy had learned a hard lesson about speaking up when nobody wanted to listen. As he walked to his mom's truck at the end of the day, Tommy made a decision. He would keep his head down, do his job, and stop offering suggestions. Maybe Mr. Davis was right. Maybe he was just a kid who didn't know his place. But deep down, Tommy still believed he knew what was wrong with that hydraulic press. And tomorrow, when more farmers came in needing help, he would have to watch them leave disappointed while knowing he might have been able to fix their problem. What Tommy didn't know was that his father had heard about the equipment breakdown from his office, across town, and was planning to visit the shop the next day to see how his employees were handling the crisis. Tommy woke up the next morning feeling different. The excitement he used to have about going to work was gone, replaced by a heavy feeling in his stomach. He got dressed slowly, ate breakfast without much appetite, and rode to work in silence, while his mom hummed along to the radio. You seem quiet today, honey, his mom said as she pulled into the parking lot. Everything okay at work? Tommy forced a smile. Yeah, just tired, I guess. She studied his face for a moment. Well, you know you can talk to me about anything, right? I know, Mom. Thanks. As he walked through the front doors of Riverside Farm Equipment, Tommy could already hear the familiar sounds of frustrated customers. The hydraulic press had now been down for 3 full days, and word was spreading throughout the farming community. Betty was at her desk looking overwhelmed. The phone was ringing constantly, and she had a line of farmers waiting to speak with her. When she saw Tommy, she gave him a tired but genuine smile. Morning, Tommy. Brace yourself, it's going to be another long day. The parts room felt like a safe haven compared to the chaos in the front area. Tommy threw himself into his work, organizing bolts, cleaning tools, and restocking shelves. He was determined to do exactly what Mr. Davis had told him to do and nothing more. Around 9:30, Tommy heard a commotion from the workshop area. Curious despite himself, he peeked around the corner to see Mr. Davis standing next to the broken hydraulic press with 2 men in matching blue uniforms. Finally, the repair technicians had arrived. About time, Mr. Davis was saying. This thing has been down for 3 days. My customers are going crazy. The older technician, a man with gray hair and oil-stained hands, was already examining the machine. Well, let's see what we're dealing with here. When did it first start acting up? Monday afternoon. It was working fine, then just suddenly lost all pressure. Tommy moved closer, staying hidden behind a stack of tire rims but within earshot of the conversation. His grandfather had always told him that watching experienced mechanics work was one of the best ways to learn. The younger technician was checking fluid levels while his partner examined the main cylinder. "Fluid's clean," he reported. "No obvious contamination." "Seals look good too," the older man said. "Let's check the pressure readings." They spent the next hour going through a systematic diagnosis. Tommy watched them test pumps, check gauges, and examine every visible component. They were thorough and professional, but something seemed off to Tommy. They were looking at all the easy-to-reach parts, but hadn't checked the areas his grandfather would have examined first. "This is strange," the older technician finally said, to his partner. "Everything looks normal, but we're definitely not building proper pressure. Must be an internal leak somewhere." Mr. Davis, who had been hovering nearby the whole time, stepped forward. "How long to fix it?" "Hard to say until we find the exact problem. Could be a few hours, could be a few days. We might need to order parts." Tommy could see Mr. Davis's jaw clench. "A few days? I can't wait a few days. I've got customers breathing down my neck." "Sorry, but hydraulic systems can be tricky. Sometimes you have to take things apart piece by piece until you find the problem." From his hiding spot, Tommy was fighting an internal battle. Everything his grandfather had taught him told him that these technicians were looking in the wrong places. The sound the machine had made when it failed was very specific, and Tommy was almost certain he knew what had caused it. But after yesterday's public embarrassment, he had promised himself to stay quiet. Mr. Davis had made it crystal clear that Tommy's input wasn't welcome. The technicians worked through the morning, and Tommy went back to his regular duties. Every now and then he would hear them talking to Mr. Davis about their progress or lack thereof. They were clearly struggling to find the source of the problem. During lunch break, Tommy sat outside again, eating his sandwich and trying not to think about the hydraulic press. Joe came out and joined him, as had become their routine. "Those repair guys seem stumped," Joe said, unwrapping his own lunch. Tommy nodded but didn't say anything. "You know," Joe continued, "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about listening to machines. My dad used to say something similar when I was learning this trade." "Really?" "Oh yeah. He always said that every machine has its own personality, its own way of telling you what's wrong. Of course, you have to know how to interpret what you're hearing." Tommy took a bite of his sandwich and chewed thoughtfully. "My grandfather said the same thing. He could diagnose most problems just by the sounds a machine made." "Smart man, your grandfather. What did he think about that sound the press made when it went down?" Tommy hesitated. After yesterday, he wasn't sure he wanted to share his thoughts with anyone. But Joe had always been kind to him, and he seemed genuinely interested. "He would have said it sounded like a high-pressure leak," Tommy said quietly. "Probably in a line that's hard to see, maybe behind the main housing where it connects to the cylinder assembly." Joe raised his eyebrows. "That's pretty specific. You really think that's what it is?" "I'm not sure of anything anymore," Tommy admitted. "Yesterday made me realize I might not know as much as I thought I did." "Hey," Joe said gently, "don't let Davis get in your head like that. He was way out of line yesterday, and everyone knows it. Even some of the customers were talking about how he treated you." Before Tommy could respond, they heard raised voices from inside the building. Through the open door, they could see Mr. Davis talking animatedly with the two technicians. "What do you mean you can't find it?" Mr. Davis was saying. "You've been here 4 hours." "Sir, we understand your frustration," the older technician replied calmly. "But these things take time. We've checked all the obvious places. Now we need to start taking apart some of the more complex components." "And how long will that take?" "Could be the rest of the day, maybe longer. And if we need to order parts, you're looking at several more days for delivery." Mr. Davis threw his hands up in the air. "This is a disaster. I've got farmers threatening to take their business elsewhere. I've got equipment orders backing up. And now you're telling me it might be next week before this thing is fixed?" Tommy and Joe exchanged glances. The situation was clearly getting worse, not better. After lunch, Tommy tried to focus on his work, but he kept hearing updates from the workshop. The technicians had started disassembling major components, and it was becoming clear that they were in for a long, expensive repair process. Around 3 o'clock, Tommy was restocking filters when he heard a familiar voice at the front desk. It was the gray-haired farmer woman who had stood up for him yesterday. "Betty, honey, any word on that hydraulic press?" she was asking. "The technicians are still working on it, Mrs. Wilson, but it's looking like it might be several more days." Mrs. Wilson sighed deeply. "Several more days? Well, I guess I'll have to drive all the way to the next county to get my work done. That's going to cost me a fortune in gas and time." Tommy felt a knot form in his stomach. Here was someone who had defended him yesterday, and now she was suffering because of a problem he believed he could solve. It felt wrong to just stand by and do nothing. But what could he do? Mr. Davis had made it perfectly clear that Tommy's help wasn't wanted. The professional technicians were here now, doing things the proper way. Who was he to second-guess them? As the afternoon wore on, more customers came and went, all receiving the same disappointing news. Some were understanding, others were angry, but all of them were being hurt by the delay. Tommy was moving a heavy box of parts when he accidentally bumped into one of the technicians who was walking past with a clipboard. "Sorry," Tommy said quickly. The young technician smiled. "No problem, kid. Say you work here regularly?" "Yes, sir, just for the summer, though." "You ever seen this hydraulic press when it was working?" Tommy nodded. "Yes, sir, I watched it running on my first day." "Notice anything unusual about it? Any strange noises or vibrations?" For a moment, Tommy considered telling him about the sound he had heard. But then he remembered Mr. Davis's warning about staying in his lane. "Not really," Tommy said. "It seemed to be working fine." The technician nodded and walked away, leaving Tommy feeling like he had just lied. Which, in a way, he had. By 4 o'clock, the technicians were packing up their tools. Tommy could hear them talking to Mr. Davis near the front of the building. "We're going to need to order some specialized equipment to continue the diagnosis," the older man was explaining. "We've eliminated all the common causes, so now we're looking at some of the more complex internal components." "When can you get back here?" Mr. Davis asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "Probably Monday if we can get the equipment we need." "Might be Tuesday." "Monday or Tuesday? That's almost a week from when this thing first broke down." "I know. It's frustrating, sir. But we want to do this right. Rushing the job could cause more damage and end up costing you even more money." After the technicians left, the building fell into an uncomfortable silence. Mr. Davis stood in the middle of the workshop, staring at the silent hydraulic press like it was his worst enemy. Tommy was cleaning up his work area when he heard footsteps approaching. He looked up to see Mr. Davis walking toward him, and his heart started beating faster. "Kid," Mr. Davis said, his voice tired, "I want you to stay away from that press, I mean it. Don't even look at it, I've got enough problems right now without you getting any ideas." "Yes, sir," Tommy replied quietly. "Good. Because if anything happens to that machine while those technicians are gone, I'll know exactly who to blame." As Mr. Davis walked away, Tommy felt a mix of hurt and frustration. He hadn't done anything wrong, yet he was being treated like he was planning to sabotage the equipment. The rest of the afternoon passed slowly. Customers continued to come in asking about repairs, and Betty continued to give them disappointing news. The atmosphere in the building was tense, and everyone seemed to be walking on eggshells around Mr. Davis. Just before closing time, Tommy was sweeping the floor near the front desk when he heard Betty answering the phone. "Riverside Farm Equipment, this is Betty," she said in her usual cheerful voice. Then her expression changed. "Oh, hello, Mr. Thompson." "Yes, sir, I know there have been some challenges this week." Tommy's ears perked up at the mention of Mr. Thompson. That was his father's name, but it was a common enough name that it could be anyone. "Yes, sir, the hydraulic press has been down since Monday," Betty continued. "We've had technicians here today, but they weren't able to fix it. They'll be back Monday or Tuesday." There was a long pause as Betty listened to whoever was on the other end. "Yes, sir, I understand. Of course, you're welcome to come by any time. We'll see you tomorrow morning." She hung up the phone and immediately looked worried. Mr. Davis, who had been organizing paperwork nearby, walked over to her desk. "Who was that?" he asked. "That was Mr. Thompson," Betty said quietly. "The owner. He's coming in tomorrow morning to see how we're handling the situation." Tommy watched as all the color drained from Mr. Davis's face. The owner was coming for an inspection, and the shop's most important piece of equipment was still broken after 3 days. "Did he sound angry?" Mr. Davis asked. "No, not angry, but he definitely sounded concerned. He mentioned something about customer satisfaction and making sure we're exploring all possible solutions." Mr. Davis began pacing behind the front desk. "All possible solutions, what's that supposed to mean?" Tommy quietly finished his sweeping and prepared to leave for the day. As he walked toward the exit, he could hear Mr. Davis muttering to himself about tomorrow's visit and how he was going to explain the situation to the owner. Outside, Tommy's mom was waiting in the pickup truck. As they drove home, she asked about his day, and Tommy gave his usual response that everything was fine. But his mind was racing with thoughts about tomorrow. The owner was coming to evaluate how the situation was being handled. Mr. Davis was clearly worried about his job. The farmers were suffering because they couldn't get their equipment repaired. And somewhere in that hydraulic press was a problem that Tommy believed he could solve in less than an hour. But he had been told in no uncertain terms to stay away from the machine and mind his own business. Tomorrow would bring the owner's visit, and Tommy would have to watch from the sidelines as his workplace fell apart around a problem he thought he could fix. What Tommy didn't know was that the owner coming to visit was his own father, and that this visit would change everything. Within an hour, the hydraulic press was running perfectly. Mrs. Wilson was the first customer to get her work done, and her face beamed with relief as she watched her parts being properly fitted. "Thank you, Tommy," she said, giving him a gentle pat on the shoulder. "You saved my harvest." As the day progressed, more customers came in and got their urgent repairs completed. The atmosphere in the building was completely different from the tension and frustration of the previous days. James pulled Tommy aside as the workday was ending. "I'm proud of you, son. Not just for figuring out the problem, but for how you handled being treated unfairly. You kept trying to help even when people weren't listening." "Thanks, Dad. I just remembered what Grandpa always said about machines telling you what's wrong if you know how to listen. Your grandfather was a wise man, and he'd be proud of how you used what he taught you." Mr. Davis approached them hesitantly. "Mr. Thompson, I want you to know that I've learned something important today. I promise it won't happen again." James studied him for a moment. "I hope not, Mr. Davis, because treating people with respect isn't just the right thing to do, it's good business. Today proved that." As Tommy and his father walked out to their vehicles, Tommy felt different than he had in days. The heavy feeling in his stomach was gone, replaced by a sense of accomplishment and pride. "Dad," he said, "do you really think I could have a future in mechanical work?" James smiled. "Son, after what I saw today, I think you could have a future in whatever you set your mind to. But yes, you've definitely got your grandfather's gift for understanding machines." The next week, Tommy continued his summer job with a new level of respect from his coworkers. Mr. Davis kept his promise and began treating everyone more fairly. And the hydraulic press ran perfectly, keeping the farmers happy and the business running smoothly. Sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places, and the most important lesson anyone can learn is to listen with an open mind and treat everyone with the respect they deserve.